he's like, if you're going to go run with me, you're going to hurt and I'm going to hurt and we're going to see how it ends up. But my philosophy was kind of, the more aggressive you can be. If you don't, so again, at Miami, we were getting kids that weren't as talented as the Notre Dame kids or the XYZ kids. So we had to be more aggressive in our training. We had to be a little bit more aggressive in our competing to be able to somehow compete with some of these teams. Now, a lot of teams we couldn't compete with, but the ones we could compete with, we competed with them because we were a little bit more aggressive than what you could. And and the athletes that aren't as talented, you just got to get their mindset, to where they can be a little bit more aggressive in the front. Because you look at the ACCs, and the last person through the mile at the
Still
ACC
running
cross
like
country is 440. And if you can't hang with that, you're at the very back, and you got to find a way. But again, I like, if you're fit, you can be aggressive. Um, as I'm coaching high school kids now, I try to get them to be a little bit more pace oriented. But again, I don't like to pull back from that thing of go compete, be a competitor. Don't look at the FL runners and see I'm supposed to be 10th in this race today and go run a 10th place race. Go compete. So does that mean run with the not with the top
yeah.
kids, but maybe that second pack you need to sit on there and see how it develops and see what happens and be a competitor.
I feel like it's that's still, no matter how long I've been running, that's still the piece that I'm working on, like that confidence. When I'm in really good shape, I'm like I'm going, but
Yeah,
now that that I'm trying to get back into shape, I'm like maybe I just need to see what mile I'm going to go out at. But
right.
but
Yeah,
yeah, I do. That is something that I do struggle with, and I know I gotta keep working on for
yeah,
sure.
no, because it's been a long time since I've been anywhere close to that. But I remember, running 10-mile races and going out really hard. And, I like mile two, I'm like, oh, this feels pretty good now. Because I mean, the first mile was really fast,
Yeah.
Whatever. And then you get in that rhythm and you stay in that rhythm, and it's like, no, this ain't too bad now. But if I didn't challenge myself and force myself to run with that group of people or run that fast, I would have never known. I'd be sitting back and go through the things. So you got to challenge yourself at times and figure out where you're correct placing and what kind of runner you are.
Yeah, I feel like the older I get, the it's harder.
Believe me,
We're making a comeback this year.
it gets worse. So do it now.
Do it now.
Yeah.
Then I was super curious to get your thoughts on nowadays. It seems like people run a marathon and then the next day they're registered for another marathon. That's like
Yeah.
3 months from now.
So
What are your thoughts on all
so
that?
back in the day, typically 2 marathons is the most that you would run.
Like a year.
Yeah, in a year. So maybe you have a fall marathon, a spring marathon. And reality is, maybe you're running Boston, so maybe you have to qualify. But once you get Boston done and you don't need it anymore, it depends what you're looking at. Because if you're just training for the marathon, that's one thing. But if you're training to run faster in the marathon, it's something else. Because if you're training to run faster in the marathon, you've got to run 10Ks and half marathons faster than what you've been running. So that means you've got to run 5Ks and faster stuff and in training so that you can run faster in the marathon. Because if you just keep on going out running slow miles and you race the marathon, basically, training is basically adaptation, no matter what you're training, whatever it is, running or lifting weights, whatever. It's your body's adaptation to the workload. So if your workload is going out and running 10 miles a day at 10-minute pace, guess what? When it comes race day, that's what you've been training for. And race day, you're like, well, why can't I run 8-minute mile pace? because you haven't trained for 8 minute mile pace. So you've got to train specifically for what you want to get at the end of the thing.
So for like a newer runner that just started running, say maybe a year or 2 years ago, what would you recommend they start off with? I feel like most new runners just jump straight into the marathon.
Yeah. I wouldn't. Because you want to get some, and most runners nowadays don't try. I mean, back in the day, again, I'm going back to 60s, 70s, 80s. Typically, runners were putting at least 50 miles a weekend.
Yeah.
Now it's people that are running 3, 4 times a week, and they're running marathons, which is okay. But if you don't have much volume, um, more susceptible to injury, more susceptible to poor performance, all those kinds of things. But if that's where you want to be as a runner, fine. You know, do your things, do it for fitness, do it for fun, all those kinds of things. So there's different things. But if you want to do it for performance, there's a different way of doing that.
Right.
And typically you train at shorter distances, you train faster, so that when you go up to the longer stuff, you can run it for
A little bit
easier, you know, and have adapted your body to be able to tolerate what's going on physically, emotionally, you know, breathing, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, I remember when I was telling you, hey, I'm gonna do the marathon. Like, get this out the way. You're like, but why? So we put a pause on the marathons for now, and we're gonna, Coach Ward's gonna help us with this 5K goal that we have of ours. The other thing I was curious is, just because we've been working together, I mean, obviously you've been running forever.
Yeah.
The shoes, how shoes have changed.
Shoes have changed, and that's probably my biggest pet peeve right now in the running thing is, God, the shoes are just so soft and so bouncy, and you know, again in the 60s and 70s we were wearing, Tiger, which is now Asics, and Nike came out about that time. We were basically wearing a nylon upper with a basically small rubber sole, and nowadays you got
That's your racing shoe. If
that's
that.
right, yeah. Now it's totally different. It's kind of personally, it's hard for me to find the shoe that I like. There's so many choices and there's so many options, and it's definitely a challenge to find something that you.
Well, I was just watching. I've seen the Without Limits movie, Pre's movie, like 1,000 times. But
right.
I just watched it the other day, and I was like, look, just the shoes, like so crazy.
I mean, we were basically running in glorified
It's
bowling
right?
shoes. I mean, glorified bowling shoes, and the funny thing is your legs got adjusted to them. They adapted to it. So I mean, I've run marathons in in Tiger Jayhawks, they were called, and pretty well. Now I probably couldn't run a mile. I wouldn't even use them for bedroom slippers. It's just
because you're not used to them anymore. In injury standpoint, so back then when you were running in those shoes, any major injuries that you suffered? Have you noticed any correlation with it, or?
I would get now. Granted, I mean, I was running fast-ish, so I was running track stuff. I was running cross-country stuff. I was running road races stuff. I was racing quite a bit. Typically, if I ever got any injuries, it was typically Achilles stuff, because back then the Adidas Gazelle, which is basically a kind of wear the soccer practice shoe kind of now, was our if you had the Adidas Gazelle training shoe, you thought you had the best training shoe on the market.
I'm gonna have to Google that.
Yes, and I still have pairs of Adidas Gazelles. Once in a while I do a stride in, and I feel like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I ran 16-mile runs in these things. But back then, and if you look at the top Olympic guys back in the 60s and stuff, and you look at Frank Shorter and Bill Rogers and all those guys, and maybe not Bill, but Frank Shorter, the Florida Track Club guys, they're running in Adidas Gazelles, cross, on dirt, grass, track workers. I use them for everything, So So I would get typically Achilles.
Gotcha, which makes sense with all the
Yeah,
faster pace.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then, were you lifting back then, or was
No,
that
no, I was never.
That's I feel like that's been a big change in the
Yeah,
coaching.
yeah. Lifting wasn't. I mean, my high school was one of the first high schools to have a universal gym, and that was because our football program was so good, and our football coach became the track coach was into lifting because he thought it made our football players more, stronger and
Yeah.
powerful, all that kind of stuff. In reality, it did. So there was nothing really organized with track per se of lifting, especially in high school, college. I never did any. We were never, um, now every college program
It's
lifts.
lifting, yeah.
The college I went to, and pretty much back then, there wasn't much lifting. There was stretching, there was static stretching. Um, I was pretty fit because uh, I swam. I was a lifeguard in the summer, but push-ups, sit-ups, all that kind of calisthenic
Calisthenics, yeah.
type stuff. Those stuff that we did, and I did those rigorously. Um, you know, not I did them personally. Nobody told me to do them, kind of thing.
Where you're lifting now.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I'm definitely. That's one thing that's changed. I'm definitely lifting now, and that has changed. And like I said, uh, high school programs, college programs, they typically lift.
Well, before we wrap up, anything you want to share with the runners? Any words of wisdom for myself?
Yeah, no. Again, I think basically consistency in your training is significant because if you have an injury or if you take downtime, that in 2 weeks you start to detrain. So it takes 2 weeks to have a training effect. It takes 2 weeks to have a negative training effect of detraining. It's funny. I remember in the '60s when the U.S. was in the astronaut, thing and Tang and all those kinds of things. There are studies out there that we actually put astronauts in bed for extended periods of time
Right.
to see, and we saw significant reductions in athletic physical abilities after 2 weeks. So if you're, injured or just taking downtime or whatever the case might be, you're detraining. You're going backwards. So consistency is significant. I know personally myself, I wasn't a great athlete, but the consistency made me a much better runner than I could ever be, you know, going up and down in the training. So consistency is the key of training and getting better. Yeah, yeah.
If people want to work with you, are you accepting new runners right now, or what's that looking like?
Yeah, I mean, I do. My email is coachward1 at verizon.net, coachward1 at verizon.net, number one. I look at people, I have a wide variety. So right now, I'm coaching at Carrollton. I'm the director of running at Carrollton. And we've got some great young ladies running. We've got 2 8th graders, 1 8th graders running 5:26 for the mile, and others running 2:24 for 800 meters. So 2 girls, both 8th graders under 5:30 for the mile. Pretty cool. To the other spectrum, I have 50 and 60-year-old runners some are running for fitness, some are running to get better in, the big three or the major marathons. So, and everything in between. So, you got to figure out what you want to do, and there's coaches out there. There's a lot of coaches. I would recommend getting somebody that's at least certified. Coaching, anybody can put a coach on their wall, but get somebody with experience. Get somebody that was a runner. Get somebody that knows what they're talking about. Is going to help you.
Well,
Yep.
Thank you so much for watching. I will put in the notes how to reach out to Coach Ward. And yeah, hope you enjoyed another Cactus Friday.
Thank you.
Coach. You did great.